Dear Venerable brothers and sisters, dear Dhamma friends, this is the time for our today's Dhamma talk. To start the Dhamma talk, everyone may consent with 3 times, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Katanca bhikkhave atitang anvagameti Evaṃ saññaṃ ahosiṃ atīta maddhānanti tattananding samanvāneti Evaṃ saññā siyaṃ anāgata maddhānanti tattananding samanvāneti. Dear Dhamma friends, for the last 3 days, we were in a meditation retreat. And each day we have allocated time, and throughout that we were delivering a talk. And all of the talks are based upon a particular and important discourse of the Buddha, known as Bhaddekaratta Sutta. And there the Buddha is going to introduce or going to define the solitude type of the ideal type of solitude, and for that what are the pros and cons, what are the things disturbing us from this particular kind of solitude, and what are the proximate factors where we can sort them out and reach it in this very life. With that respect, the Buddha says these 5 aggregates, whenever they are not understood, not mastered, they really disturb this our freedom as well as the solitude. And whenever we can master them, whenever we can understand them, and one's very knows, then that very disturbing aggregates can pave the path to this solitude. Understanding these basics, first day we try to deal with the materiality, the corporeality, or in the simple tense, the body, as one of the aggregates. And second day we try to analyze and go into the feelings. And in both the cases, the antithesis the Buddha introduced as 2 extremes. And by avoiding these antitheses, we can reach the productive part or constructive part, that is to call the middle path. So, thorough understanding on these 2 extremes is a must in order to understand the middle path, at least in the theoretical basis. And whenever you are going to practice it, after deductive knowledges or rationalization of this theory knowledge, there also you must have a fair understanding, direct understanding of these 2 extremes, and then only one will really reconsider why one should search for this middle path. And once you get into the middle path, then only the Buddha's detailed instructions, the fine-tuning, become very significant. And from the yesterday's talk, if we are to summarize, we have, as far as the feelings are concerned, we have pleasurable feelings and the painful feelings. And whenever we are going backward, tracing back, we most of the time go backward with our feelings we experienced in the past. Whenever we are planning projections for the future, yearning for the future, that is also happening in terms of future happiness and the pleasurable sensations. So this is how one lose the present moment, whereby past and the future is going to take the majority of our time. And knowing that if someone takes the proper strategical way to keep the stream of consciousness in the present moment, that often we call as meditation. And whenever we take an object of meditation and manage to keep the track with, keep the face-to-face with, slowly, with a strategical way, we can reach or we can do away with the extreme pleasures and extreme pains and come to a somewhat middle. And more you one practice, go to a state called no pain, no pleasure. So even though it is unperceivable under the normal circumstances or under the untrained mind, more and more you train, you will develop your own methods, ways and means to go into this no pain, no pleasure situation. And they are, for the first time, when you are meeting, when you are experiencing, when you are acquainting with this no pain, no pleasure, you of course feel kind of a strange feelings, because this is not much familiar. So therefore, one may arrive at a decision wrongly that this kind of no pain, no pleasure is possible only in the deep meditation, deep concentration, and in the intensive way of sitting in the meditation center or in the meditation hall. But this is not the case. Instead, if you can understanding the nature, experiencing the no pain, no pleasure, when you go to walking meditation also, after a certain amount of mindfulness, after development of certain amount of mindfulness, so to say there's some kind of a momentum or acceleration in the mindfulness, that means steadfast mindfulness, and a certain amount of concentration, you may come closer to that kind of no pain, no pleasure situation, even though your eyes are open, even though you are here and there listening to the bird sounds and sometimes to your steps, you can experience it. And more and more you to alternate it to sitting and walking meditation, you may find that in the walking meditation also, you can go sometimes to very deep layers. And with that experience, if you extend further into your extensive way, that is in the day-to-day activities also, at the beginning, you may reach that kind of no pain, no pleasure status. Whenever you are alone, doing tasks in a little bit of a slow manner and carefully listening to your own sounds, and if the mindfulness is coming, then you can experience this no pain, no pleasure situation. This is how you just introduce at the beginning to the sitting, walking and day-to-day activities. And understanding and appreciating this kind of no pain, no pleasure, if you are keen enough to adjust your liking and dislikings, adjust your timetable, adjust your postures, adjust your feeding habit, adjusting your friends, you may find that with each and every strategy, you can slowly maximize it. And that must be the way that you have to facilitate this Bhaddekaratta concept. And ultimately, or easily you will understand, most of the time, your mind is in no pain, no pleasure. If you are keen enough to pick and understand and isolate the pleasurable thought moments and the painful thought moments, it will explain very little fraction of your time, of your day. And majority of the time you may find you are already in no pain, no pleasure. And that will prove you even if you trace back to the past, you were already in, even before you started the mindfulness, even before you started the Satipatthana kind of teachings, it was there, and either we misunderstand it or we sometimes never understand it. So therefore, as far as this the middle path is concerned, or this no pain, no pleasure situation is concerned, this is something that which you did not earn through the meditation. Of course, you first recognize due to the keen instructions of the Buddha, and you manage to maximize it, to appreciate it, then only you will come to know this is a common endowment of all the human beings. But due to this pleasure principle, they are always seeking behind how to maximize the pleasure. They don't know this is a kind of a bias approach, or they are aiming something called extremes. More and more you have to fight for and aim for the pleasure, what is at last you will end up with the pain. But instead, because that pain and pleasure is always transient in nature. The pain and pleasure has its own cause. Whenever the causes are changed, they are transient. But when you go to the no pain, no pleasure, hardly any transient nature you can attribute to that. So therefore, more it is appear more mature and appear like the canvas of the picture. It is painted with the pain and the pleasure. If you can see through it, you can see the canvas, and that is giving the base, and that is already earned. It's a birthright with you. So then onward, if you are wise enough, or in the sense if you are considering about your well-being, and if you are compassionate to you, if you are developing loving kindness to you, you have to think about how to facilitate this no pain, no pleasure situation. So when you are reading particularly speaking the teaching of the Buddha, you may find it's a treasure. It's a huge amount of information for you to make use in order to facilitate this no pain, no pleasure. But if you do not have this correct viewpoint, correct foresight, whatever the discourses you read, hardly you can understand its trend, its direction. So therefore, more and more you meditate, more and more you understand this teaching of the Buddha. And more you to understand it, you get more and more faith, energy, resolute faith to practice more and more. So it is catching the momentum, and definitely you will be pushed, or you will be delivered to a lot of other equal-minded, like-minded friends. And then only you can see it is not something abnormal, even though it is not much popular, and it's quite a very sound basis is there, that is with respect to feelings. But this is not the only path, and everyone may not follow the same. As the day before we discussed, the materiality, the corporeality, and the body itself also giving same kind of approach. And today we are going to take up the perception as an aggregate, how this perception or how through the perception we can understand the same thing from a different point of view, different facet, and how to reach this middle path. So perception, it's the Buddha, according to the teaching of the Buddha, it is the label, or it is a signpost or signboard to recognize anything you feel worth recognizing. So therefore, you have to have certain amount of signboards or labels, so that in this transition, in this the flux, transient nature, everything you won't recognize as equally important. Some of them you find very interesting, very important, and it is a kind of a natural selection, and you wish to keep them in your memory and in the mind. Under such circumstances, you have to select some of the things in come view with your eye, or align with your or come face to face with your ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body, sometimes the mind. So this the labels and the signs are very important, and this is not only in the meditation, even in the computer science. Each and every bit of information are being codified and put into the memory, and whenever you work in the memory, they come in combination and decoding happen. Either it will appear in your monitor, or appear in the speaker, or appear in your projector, whatever may be, they come back. This is exactly explaining how the mind is working. So whenever we are accepting this as the norm, we fail to understand in our memory only we have some signs, only we have some labels, not the reality. So whenever you are reification, when you are recognizing something, also with the consultation of your past memory, the recognition happens through this decoding system, and there you are consulting your past memories or past perceptions, past labels, and they are all some representing thing, but not the reality. Because reality is in such a transient nature. Reality cannot be stored. So therefore you have to codify it, and under the notion of permanent notion, only the memory can take place. Whenever you are going to recognize something, reification, then you are using it because it is, you consider it is me, it is mine, it is myself, it is my liking, it is my disliking, it is my personality. So you take it as a yardstick, and therefore anything new happen, if it is not fit with your likings and disliking, if it is not fit with your personality traits and your memory, you become bewildered. You never are ready to accept it. But whenever you are using this, it is under the notion of permanent. So therefore, the sanya, the perception, is making a huge difference, huge camouflage, a gloss over, unless otherwise you are really sharp to really sharply understand the mechanism there. The example given is the Buddha in the mirage. It happened due to the excessive heat, and you can see as if a body of water with frills and ripples. From a distance you see this as a body of water, but it is just heat, or due to the thermal action it happens. So if you are not well instructed and well prepared, you will chase behind to reach this mirage, but by running you will never reach it. The distance will be ever constant. And even we'll say on the theoretical run, if you go there, you never find the water as such. So therefore, when we are considering this kind of an example, it says, what you see is not existing. What is existing is not the thing that you see. But that is not the case in the everywhere to a commoner. They usually take what is existing is what we see, and what we see is existing. This is happened due to this, the permanent notion. So Buddha is utterly challenging it. He says, just take the example of this mirage. Or when you are in a dream, you are really experiencing it. You feel sometimes emotions also. Sometimes you are physically also active, but soon you get up, you come to know it is just a dream. And there you are fully experiencing, but soon you get up, wake up. You know it's a mind made. From the point of view of the Buddha or any enlightened, all the commoners are something like in dream. Awakened people understand the difference between awakened mind and the sleeping mind. Though therefore the Buddha's epithet, the awakened mind, awakened person, is that he know what is the game of this perception, and when the perception is going to interpret something, it interprets not the things as they are, not the reality. It has a partial reality. It has your own likings and disliking, your personality traits. So therefore, whenever something exposed to two people, their interpretations are different, because their perception is different. So therefore, how to get into this subject, how to analyze it, how to experience rather than this senses or sensuous thing, how the perception is working is very tricky. It has a lot of perversions. It has a lot of mischievous kind of characters, and therefore you have to, first and foremost, have to understand what we see, what we hear, what we smell, and what we taste, and the touch. They have this kind of perverted nature. So therefore, leave a certain amount of room for this transient nature to take place. Don't take everything as existing, everything is permanent. So instead you have to develop notion of impermanence. If it is not really incorporated into your mind is working under the notion, the common norm, everything exists, everything permanent. And out of this permanent thing, by adjusting them, we can get away from this suffering. We can seek pleasure. But instead, if you are ready to understand, everything is transient, by changing, by adjusting the combination, you can't reach a predictable pleasure. May or may not be. So therefore, is it worth taking this much of fight, this much of time, this much of jealousy, this much of envy, this much of hate, this much of desire for this kind of future planning? And that is what happened in the past also. So therefore, whenever you are challenging this, you are really declaring war with your likings and disliking. Kind of declaring war with your personality traits. So therefore, highly involved thing. That is why someone to understand the mechanism of the perception, best way is to first understand this dualistic nature of the materiality, and then how to assimilate the middle path with the knowledge of the extremes. And that is something like physics. And then you have to, that is materialistic. And then you have to come with that particular understanding that if basically the mindfulness and the concentration, you have to come to the feelings, and they also understand the pleasurable part, painful part, and then come to the no pain, no pleasure. So when you are coming there, you are reaching a kind of a perception. It's it is more closer to the reality, and it is a little bit further away from the perception related with senses and the faculties. That is why the Buddha says, of course that is relevant to the materiality too, whenever you are going to study that kind of thing, or inward path, you can't deal with so much of variables. That's why he says, go to a forest or under a tree or a secluded place, so you are not responsible. You are not take the responsibility regarding this socialization, duties and kind of thing. And you come to a sitting posture under the intensive meditation, you are supposed to close your eyes. So there won't be much of involvement regarding the cognition and recognition of the visual objects. And you must go to a silent place so that you can do away with cognizing and recognizing of sounds or reification of the sounds and the smell and the taste. And the body also, you have to keep it in such a way you are not manipulating it, monitoring it with any intentions, no volitional actions. You just observe what is happening in an involuntary way, the breath, for an example. When you observe in the breath, you have to keep all the other faculties closed or with a distance. But it's very difficult. Because so far in the life, so far in our journey, we were ever giving diversified way of visual objects, different kind of musics and sounds, and different smells, and tasting different foods, and luxury-wise, so much of luxuries. So therefore, soon you cut off them, there's a huge difference within the mind, but without that, very difficult to trace into one single variable. In this case, we take, for an example, the breath. So when you observe in the breath, you have to understand when the mind is agitated, because it is all the influxes or sensuous impingements are cut off. So mind will cornered, it will isolated, trapped like. So therefore it is at the beginning very quite agitated. So therefore the agitated mind only can perceive the gross, rough in-breath touching sensation. The gross, rough in-breath, out-breath touching sensation, just like the tip of the iceberg. Your normal perception hardly can observe only the tip of the iceberg. Many people say even that is impossible. They can't feel the breath. So that may be the reason why that Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw came out with rising and falling of the abdomen. And there's a little difference, because for in-breath and out-breath, there are two peaks, peak of the in-breath and the peak of the out-breath, that means two waves. But instead, if you observe the rising and falling, there's a one single big wave. So therefore, at the end of the rising and the beginning of the falling, you have a very tensed, single, gross feeling, so easy to tackle. Instead of two small drops, you can see a big dot or peak. So anyway, that is for the sake of comparison. So when you come back to the breath, you can see the untrained mind, unmindful mind, unconcentrated mind only see the tip, tip of the iceberg, tip of the in-breath and tip of the out-breath. So first we have to do is facilitate the mind, give the enough facilities so that mind will in such a manner see each and every arising in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath. In order to facilitate, you are using the perception. In order to make sure each and every in-breath and out-breath is under your very nose, you note them. In-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath. That is the way you are going to give the kind of a perception, reification at the beginning. So once you assured, once you are familiarized this, you are supposed to see the early beginning of the in-breath. So therefore your attention, your vigilance, your mindfulness has to be very sharp as to see how from the unperceivable in-breath become perceivable. And from the unperceivable part of the out-breath, how it comes into the perceivable level. So this is a very fine-tuning. So when you are observing, that means you have to be ready, be on the ball, as and when the in-breath sets in, as and when the out-breath sets in. So this is how you sharpen your mindfulness, go for fine-tuning of the mindfulness, and that, in a sense, you become more and more proximate with the breath, observe very immediately, so that not you are delaying. On the spot you wait, as and when the in-breath is happening, as and when the out-breath is happening. So now you are at the water level of the iceberg. So you are slowly going submarine, under the water, little by little at the edge. When these two edges, arising edge and the passing away edge, the Buddha is so, in a intelligent way, wise way, he says, don't worry about the passing away part, just see the arising of the in-breath and arising of the out-breath. Because in our normal life, anything passing away we consider as unauspicious. But anything arising in our normal values considered as auspicious. When a child is born, we throw parties. When a death happens, it is something to be mourned. It is not good. That is the way everything. So therefore the Buddha never asked the beginners to see the cessation part. Instead asking to see the arising part, the perception, how it come into perception from the unperceivable level. So it's a very involved kind of experiment. When you go there, more and more you become very sharp, and your sensitivity level will be very sharp day by day. So when that happens, the Buddha says, if you take care to see the beginning and the middle of the breath, in-breath, beginning and the middle of the out-breath, he assures, naturally you will see one day the cessation of the in-breath, the cessation of the out-breath. So that is the time you are going to say the beginning, the middle and the end of the in-breath, the beginning, the middle and the end of the out-breath. But that does not indicate you have seen the whole graph. The amount that you perceive determined by your sensitivity. Still you can keep on tuning, fine-tuning, adjusting. When you go there, as far as you are not reaching the total graph, you see a gap between in-breath and out-breath, out-breath and in-breath. More and more your sensitivity goes, you will rather dissolve this gap, and you can see the continuity, end of the out-breath and then beginning of the in-breath. End of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath, there your perception will be challenged. It will be bewildered. It will be opening the doors to the unknown. It will open the door to the unperceivable. Very, very subtle states of your mind. So much so, you will claim, or you will rather complain, no more you can see the difference between the in-breath and out-breath. Of course, you are aware, you are breathing, you are living, you are not dead, you are not sleepy. But very in-breath and out-breath at the beginning you perceived discreetly, as to say in-breath is cooler and out-breath is warmer, in-breath is longer, out-breath is shorter, or in-breath is shorter, out-breath is longer, in-breath is rough, out-breath is soft. Whatever may be, if you are clearly manage to understand when it is gross and discrete, now you are bound to see the otherwise. They are almost equal. So much so, they are equal to the gap. Then you see only a flux, only a continuity of energy, continuity of flux. So when that happens, some people observe this as a light. Some people observe light perception. Some people feel no boundary. Now some people going to say, no more I can note it. No more I can label them. Because it's a continuity happen. So many tend to get frightened. Many tend to get uncertainty, feel like lost. And they attribute, sometimes telling now mindfulness has gone, or my concentration has gone, or they tend to entertain doubts. And if you are not sharp enough, that means if you are not vigilant enough, under such circumstances, mind escape through falling into sleep. Of course, this is not a kind of a sleep, but slumber or kind of sloth and torpor. It's a very short break, and again you come back to the meditation or into the breathing with a jerk, with a shock. So therefore, many feel something happening and unpredictable, unexpected, so they get frightened and they sometimes leave the meditation hall, get up and go, and sometimes they change their masters, they change their meditation objects, they change their meditation centers, thinking Anapana is not my meditation object, it is not leading me, it is rather misleading me. Because they have so much of permanent notion that Anapana must be consistent. Not only that, interesting enough, you predict the mindfulness also must be continuous. The concentration also must be continuous. And your awareness also must be continuous. But what happens is, when the materiality, the in-breath and out-breath becomes subtler and subtler and subtler, everything becomes challenging. So you do not know whether the materiality has disappeared, or whether feelings have disappeared, or you become benumbed, or you become sleepy, because perception also not there. So therefore it is worth entertaining doubts. But in the 7 stages of purification, the Buddha says there's a one purification, it is known as purification by overcoming doubts. So this is a very transitional age or period in one's meditation, because if someone had any kind of a refuge outside, he or she will be at lost. Instead you have your faith, your resolute faith on your own mindfulness, on your own concentration, on your own perception of impermanence. This will be a very hilarious, juicy and sappy experience. But it's electric. It's a highly impromptu, highly improvised. Sometimes yes, sometimes it is not. So therefore, whenever you are going to see the whole phenomena through this perception. You have to be a really, really bold, really, really informed, really go prepared. That means your past mistakes are your best teacher. If you are hating your mistakes, you will never go through this situation. Even if you are believing your past memories, past mistakes and kind of thing, even if you have preparedness, even if you have well-informed, not only by one incident you can master this situation. You have to do it in 1,001 times. At the beginning, you just associate this situation. This is not your individual experience. This is what the universal wave length is happening. So you are experiencing it, and now you are going to a challenging kind of or a volatile kind of perception. And even though you feel it is unstable, it's quite an equilibrium is there. Quite a balance is there. So therefore, if you facilitate it, do it, let it happen in again and again, try to experience it as if someone else, that's the first time you are going to get stand still or stand up on your own legs, and you can see it is a solid equilibrium with respect to the perception. So during the time of the Buddha, some would have experienced it. Whenever they are focusing their attention to one particular materiality, corporeality of part of your body, more and more you pay the attention, consistent mindfulness, in the steadfast mindfulness, it is subject to changes, and ultimately it becomes subtler and subtler, it disappears. And when that happens, you can't say you are in a pleasurable or painful. So therefore, one person came to the Buddha, he asked, Katang sametasa vibhuti rupang. Obante, under what circumstances, under what kind of training, we can see through materiality? Sukhan dukhan chavi katang vibhuti. And how can I see through this pleasurable and painful feelings? So that means he would have hit the point, but he is uncertain. So he is asking, Katang sametas vibhuti rupang, sukhan dukhan chabi, katang kata vibhuti. How can one see through the materiality? How can one see through the common feelings? So I think you can explain it, please. Out of compassion, please explain. So then the Buddha says, na sanya sanyi, no pi visanyi, no pi asanyi, na vibhuti sanyi. Evang sametasa vibhuti rupang, sanya nidanani papancha sankha. In the Kalavivada Sutta, in the Sutta Nipata, you have this answer. The Buddha says, your perception will go and hit a point where you are no more in the perception of day-to-day perception. That means you are not perceived through the senses. Not the eye sensitivity and the visual objects. Nor the ear sensitivity and the sounds. Not the nose and the smell. Not the tongue and the taste. Not the body and the other tactile sensations. And on top of that, you are dead sure. You are not dead. You are not fainted. You are not sleepy. And you are not gone up to the non-materialistic kind of jhanic experience also. That means neva sanya na sanyayatana akinchanyayatana. Utter no perception, no neither, and no perception. So that is also not there. That is a purely inside mindset. Under such circumstances, Buddha says, all the materiality dissolves, matter dissolves into energies. Evan sametasa vibhuti rupang. Then The material cannot come and contact something. It has come up to the so subtle layers, to the energies, it's a rubbing sensation. Cannot happen. It's come to the so subtlety. Vibhuti Rupa. Evan Sametasa Vibhuti Rupa Sanyani Dhanani Papancha Sanka. And he take a very, very profound statement. All your concept become reality based upon your perception. When the matter become energy, if you perceive this as something visual, you see a limit of light in the meditation. If that energy you perceive as a sound, you will say, I heard some sound from my deceased the relatives, or some ghosts, or some devas, or some celestial beings. You perceive it as sounds. Some people perceive it as smells. Some smells of some flowers or food or something like that. Some people rarely tend to taste different kind of tastes. And the bodily sensation also, the light perception, and one part will be jerking and some part you can't perceive. This everything, any concept appear like reality at that moment. So therefore the Buddha says, the sanya, the perception is the culprit, which make this concept as reality. But if you can really understand this double game of this perception, you can understand how this world is so much of entangled in this information technology. Today age is known as information technology. We have topmost facilities, but everyone is bewildered. More and more you to listen to the information, the news and kind of thing, so much so bewilderment, you will never come back to mindfulness. You will ever distorted outwardly, wandering, daydreaming, fantasizing, and never-ending fight, and to the future. So therefore, more and more information comes, more and more people become bewildered. That is because your perception is not under control. Simply, it is not working according to your agenda. If someone asks, it is working with whose agenda, no one knows. Some people say it is the omnipotent, omnipresent God. Some people say there is an evil element that is creating suffering. So when such a problematic situation, the Sela, there's one bhikkhuni, and she is in the such situation, the evil one came and asked, the present suffering is created by you or it is created by an outsider? She says, the naidang attakatam bimbang, naidam parakatang aghang, hetum paticca sambhutang, hetu bhanga nirujjati. This creation is not mine. And it is not a punishment or any other curse, spell of the second person also. This is a cause and effect relationship. When the causes ceases to exist, the effects will be ceases to exist. But the sanya, perception by itself, never allow you to make that decision. It says this suffering is caused by this or this person. This suffering is caused by the other person. You ever engage in either destroying that element or person, or phrasing if it is a pleasurable thing, so think there's an agent. Sometimes personified, sometimes depersonified. You never come back home and see it is mind-made. And if you are not prepared with this, reinforced with this, or immunized with this, mindfulness with the materiality and the feelings, hardly you can understand this situation. But if you manage to understand, you feel what a teledrama in our day-to-day life. What a teledrama when we are in a society. What a teledrama we are in a supermarket. more and more become bewildered, and then we come and complain, we have a stress, we have a tension, and we are multitasking. And with whose agenda we are working? No one knows. And so much so, there is no perceivable end to that. Of course, at the society at large, no answer. But the Buddha, precisely he says, if you mind your own business, be here and now, then the answer is there. And that particular answer you can't give it to someone else. He or she has to learn the method and go to it. And when you go there you are. Wherever you go, there you are. But that particular situation where the breath becomes very subtle, you can't discriminate whether it is pleasurable or painful, and sometimes you cannot perceive it, but you can't deny that state is not the Nibbana. It is not the ultimatum. And this indicates now mind has come to a state where it is at the tip of the diving board. So you can jump into the water if you wish, or you can go back to the hard soil. So there when you come, you can see both the sides. You can see what is permanent, what is pleasure-seeking, the pleasure principle, and materialistic gain, and all the kind of thing. And so much so you are searching it, so much so the frustration, so much so the tension. Instead, if you believe and understand this perception, even though you can't communicate with another person, you see no rooms for tension, no rooms for frustration. And there is no assurance that it will be the same in the next moment, thought moment. It's so transient, but anyway, you can experience it. So once you come up to that level only, you will first time you see the consciousness have at least two layers. One thing is related with the senses and the faculties and the external impingements. Eye with the visual objects, ear with the sounds. But when you are mastering it, mastering means not everything by everything, you master one thing and come to know it is holographic effect. Everything represents one and one represents everything. If you can go through the in-breath and out-breath, that is exactly the same with the eye with the visual objects, ear with the sounds, everything. So that you have to deduce with your rational knowledge. And that is the only thing, that is the thing you are doing in the walking meditation also, with the visual objects, which eyes are open and the visual objects are there, sounds are there, and the other sensations also there. But if you can maintain the mindfulness and the concentration under such challenge situation, you feel like a robot. Walking happens, you can observe yourself as if another second person. And there you can't claim that mind is completely free from sounds, completely free from thoughts, completely free of pains. Everything there, but still you can disclaim it. And you can claim that your mindfulness is there, your concentration is there. There you can see the diversification of the same under different faculties, but in the day-to-day activities you are in the full-fledged. All the senses are open, and all the impingements are there active. And there also you will see remarkable thing, whatever the diversification, whatever the multitask you do, one donkey at a time. If you are seeing, that means if you are confronted with the visual objects, it is avenue to your sensitivity to the eye. At that time you can't hear, you can't smell, you can't taste, you can't touch, you can't think. So therefore when you understand the perception, whatever may be, whatever the thing you are going to perceive, that is simply 1/6 of the total experience. By selecting one, you are denying 5. And then you claim, I see, I know, I am talking with my first-hand experience, it is my personal experience life. You are really fighting without knowing this perception is painting the picture. It is partially getting a experience and painting the picture balanced from the library shots. Your likings and disliking, your personality. So it appears more personal, it appears more close to you, but you can't claim you have seen the truth. You can't claim that you have seen the things as they are. So therefore, when you come up to that level, you see how much you must be critical, how much you must be observant, how much you must be vigilant to your own direct experience with and armed with the knowledge or instructions or preparedness, and then you can see it. And that means even though the mind is not engaged with impingement and the sensuous organs, there's another kind of equilibrium halfway with the whole body experience or inner space. Even though sometimes you feel frightened, even though you feel like it's questionable, even though it is reason to entertain doubts, more and more mastering, by seasoning more and more, once you establish, you see it is also yet another equilibrium. And that is highly spiritual. It is highly religious sometimes. But possible. And the main thing, yet another remark is, not a single any other beast or animal or other beings can go up to that level and establish it. Only the human mind, we have come up to that evolutional stage, we can go there. But if we are not going there, maybe due to the lack of knowledge or lack of preparedness, you are the loser. Then you will spend the whole life engaged with your faculties and the sensuous impingements. But when you go there, you see the kind of contentment you get, the kind of saturation you get, never comparable with sensuous pleasure. So therefore the Buddha says, Sunyagaram pavittasa santachittasa bhikkhuno amanusi rati hoti the passanto udyabhya. So when a person go into a solitude place, free from visual objects, free from sounds, smells, taste and the other luxuries. But whenever the mind become aligned, go to the least frictional path, he experience kind of contentment, satisfaction. It is beyond the human contentments. It appears like so celestial. Therefore, this comes free of charge. And no one can damage it. And no maintenance cost. Important thing is, the government can't tax it. Any other thing, specifically these kind of Western governments are so, so specialized in taxing you people, you call you are well developed. But you don't know the way you have been trapped. But when you go to that, no government can tax it. No, even any evil element can come and distort you, because you know this is one of your endowment. If you are strategic and if you do again and again 1001 time of experimenting, you can go into that. So when you go only, you can understand how these your own concepts, of course related with some kind of a direct experience, you gloss over and you make it a reality and going to prove it into the other people. Telling this is what happening, this is you have to see, this is the way I see, so please accept or otherwise you try to impose. So therefore, as far as you understand this perception, your communication is at such a mess. Once you understand this aggregate, the concept, this perception, you can understand how the Buddha's message came 2,600 years without a distortion. That does not indicate each and every messenger is enlightened. Of course, lineage is there, but even other people try to understand it. They hardly understand. They misunderstand, misinterpretation so much. But still the message came because he is so sure how to communicate with this, with the people of the misperception or misunderstanding, miscommunication. So whenever you come up to that perception, equally you are exposing to a dangerous situation. Because under such circumstances, it's very easy for someone to develop extrasensory perceptions. Projecting mind to the future, the past, see the other man's mind, or immaterial pleasure, immaterial kind of jhanic experiences, or materialistic kind of jhanic experiences, and all the kind of, and the healing powers, and the communications. So when they come, if you are going to meddle with them, if you are going to overestimate them, definitely you are fallen into trap. So therefore the Buddha says, it is hard to go into that level, but don't compromise such a pure state for these trivial things. When it is such a misunderstanding, whenever this mental culture, the vipassana is going, many materialists consider this as something mystic. It is something magical, because 99% of the people go up to that level and start to do this kind of magical things. They compromise for trivial things. So therefore, hardly any person to go there, never compromise for these things, and further go into the understanding things as they are, and the purification of mind, and go into the hardcore into the mind. So therefore, whenever you come up to the no pain, no pleasure, there are some imperfections. There are some upakilesas in Pali terms. Exactly the same, when you come up to this very free, very unentangled situation, you have to maintain that purity, not to sacrifice that for the fame, gain, money, and all the kind of thing. And the main thing will be the communication. Because at that level, by itself, you can't communicate. The language cannot go up to that level. Before you go to that level, the grammar has to drop. Language has to drop. The conventional thing has to drop. But from that standpoint, you can understand how the grammar is working, how the communication lines are working, and how they miscommunicate. And if you are sharp enough, you can exploit that situation and will be an orator. Upanda Sayadaw, he says, some people misuse it in such a way, if when they are talking, even the concrete statues are going to shake heads. So much of sharpness to tell the untruth with so much of words, ultimately no one can understand what is happening. So this is how the media, this is how the convention of the religious activities and things are happening. So therefore it is a very vulnerable situation. But if you have the faith on the Buddha and the resolute faith on your morality or the moral precepts, and trust upon your mindfulness and facilitate your concentration, and then you understand such a big state you must not deal with, compromise with these trivial things. But the mind is so cunning, mind is so perverted, and it is so dishonest, even you can't trust upon. So therefore, without going into manipulations, you have to master it again and again and again and again. Then only you can see how, even though you can manage to keep the transgressional kind of defilements away, even if you can keep the obsessional kind of defilements away, how the underlining tendencies, the anusaya and asaya is working. This is the only point you can see them as they are. And the Buddha has given a very appeasing or releasing kind of assurance. By seeing them as they are, itself they vanishes. As far as this transgressional kind of or obsessional kind of defilements are there, you can see through it, but you are in a situation now, they are not really coming in the bold manner, they manifest in such a way, so you have to keep the mindset as long as possible open, knowing that anusayas and other volitional activities and kind of thing can happen. See them, disclaim them. Don't consider this as me, mine or myself. Instead, entertain the equanimity. Entertain this na sanya sanyi, no pi visanyi, no pi asanyi, na vibhuta sanyi. This kind of a neutral kind of situation, when you keep it, that will open the opportunity for the better chances for you to understand the shortcuts, or rather least frictional path, and where the power line is straightened and the power transmission or communication is happening, the superconductivity going to happen. So that is the point you can see how in the modern terminology, the right hemisphere of the brain is connected to the left hemisphere, and they come into the balance. And how the brain and the heart, they are fighting each other as far as no training on the perception is happening. When the perception is come in terms with, they start to talk each other. The brain is the base for this rationalization. The heart is for the emotions and the aesthetic ideas. So then only you can start living. Till that you are paralyzed, as far as the mental activities are concerned. And then you see how contented is the world, how aesthetic is the world. So you will understand and learn how let goism. As far as you are not manipulating, as far as you are not forking your fingers, things are happening its own accord through the universal principle of the mind, the universal principle of this climate and karmic forces, and the plant to the flowers to the seeds to the another plant. That kind of cycles are happening. So you will be a neutral observer, and you will be ever developing the facilities to be in the contentment, be in the kind of a satisfaction, saturation, and don't fight for betterment. Because you know this particular moment is the best. So not necessary to have research, not necessarily have creativity, because immediately you go for creativity, you are spoiling the present moment. You are not living, you are not entertaining the richness, the contentment of the present moment. Of course, this is not a permanent thing, it is changing. Once you understood it, easy for you to understand that the person who knows, he is rather contented, and even if he is doing something, a failure as a success, he considers equally. He won't get carried away by the success or the failure, because he knows he's coming back. He can easily come back, or strategically he can come back to this, the contented situation. So therefore, understanding of this perception, opening a new ways to see these undermining tendencies as well as the contentment in the present moment. So your whole ways and means, facilitation to protect it as much as possible, though even though it is not the final destiny, this is opportunities open now. And the single advice is, don't try to accelerate it. Don't try to be smart to jump forward. Then onward, the Dhamma, the universal law, going to work its own accord. So best thing you have to do is not to do evil things, not to disturb this track, not to disturb this trend, not to disturb this equilibrium. So therefore, understanding this perception through the materiality and the feelings is very philosophically also very interesting. And experience also really going to reshuffle your personality and the liking and disliking. It is not doing by itself, it is giving the opportunity. Then only you feel like a newly born baby and you get new life. I hope this today's Dhamma talk also helpful for you to reshuffle your meditative life and try to be contented in the present moment, be happy in the present moment. Thank you very much for listening.